Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Please take a seat. Good to see everyone. Hope you all had a restful evening and you're ready for another big day. This one will be full of senior government leaders, industry leaders, on and on, nonstop, back to back. And we're going to start with something that's current and that's fun, and with somebody who is breaking ground and innovating in ways that we have not seen before. Shayne Coplan is the founder and the CEO of Polymarket. And hopefully a lot of you had time with Shayne last night. Polymarket is a crypto-based prediction market, and it was a breakout success this year in 2024. It accurately predicted global events throughout the year, and Shayne's blockchain-based platform captivated bettors and spectators alike. And with each twist and turn we were all watching in the 2024 US presidential race, it attracted legions of new eyeballs and users who ultimately foresaw events like President Biden's withdrawal from the Democratic ticket and Trump's White House victory. Shayne views the world through the lens of probabilities. He was Decrypt's 2024 Person of the Year, and it will be very interesting to get his insights when he comes up. He is being interviewed by Joshua Rivera, the general counsel of Blockchain Capital and one of the leading legal minds in our industry. So let's listen to Joshua and Shayne. Come on up, guys. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Dave. Hello.
Thanks for such a warm introduction.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Okay. It's good to kick off day two. Had a lot of fun last night. We managed to make it, so I'm glad for that. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for the introduction. I'm assuming all of you know Polymarket by now. It was a really, really incredible platform to observe the world over 2024. I would love to start out, Shayne, with kind of the background, because I think people, a lot of times, you know, I'm Joshua, I'm the GC at Blockchain Capital. I'm one of the partners there. We invest in startups. And so it's a fun thing. And sometimes somebody just kind of seems like they wake up in the morning with an idea and they're like, yeah, let's do it. And sometimes it's great and sometimes it's not. But that wasn't really the start of Polymarket. Like, you care deeply about markets and like the philosophy of markets. I'd love for you to kind of open that window into how you started thinking about this. It's now been, what, 7 years?
4.5 years.
4.5, okay.
Interested in this topic, yeah, I'd say even beyond 7 years.
No.
You know, a lot of people ask me how I came up with the idea. The idea underpinning Polymarket is not new. It'd been written about extensively in academia. Friedrich Hayek won a Nobel Economics Prize like almost 100 years ago. Around 80 years ago, he put out the Use of Knowledge in Society, which was this seminal economics paper about how markets distribute information quicker than anything else. And basically how if there's a wool shortage in, you know, one corner of the world, then like jacket prices in another corner of the world will respond very quickly. And people built on that later on, particularly this guy, Robin Hanson, who's actually based around DC, who would write all about what he would call idea futures or information markets, decision markets, futarchy, all these complicated names that basically said, okay, we know markets are really good at price discovery. You know, some would say the wisdom of the crowd, some would say the efficient market hypothesis, whether you believe in that or not. But you know, markets are interesting where it's like if you disagree with the price, then you can put your money where your mouth is. And Hanson's ideas were, what if we took the mechanism of markets and applied it particularly to things we wanted to have information on? And that's where you get information markets. And he had written a lot about it. He had a startup that failed that tried to do it in the 90s. And it was
it a startup doing prediction markets, or
it was actually
different?
like a corporate prediction market, like a B2B product. It wasn't consumer in any way. But this idea had encapsulated a lot of people, myself included, when I was younger. And I had seen a lot of people try and build similar products to no avail. And I used them particularly, not even as a trader, particularly as someone who wanted to look at the information. And I was like, this needs to exist for everything. I had a very clear picture in my head of how it should be built and how other people had made mistakes building it prior. And at the onset of the pandemic, I really had no money. I was running out of money actively. And I was obsessed with Hansen and Hayek. And I was like, with COVID, it's like, what happens if you had a market on when the vaccine will be approved or when New York City shelter in place will be over? Obviously, you can go and hedge risk if you're like a business owner, or you can go and people were debating and yelling at each other on the internet, and you can go and put your money where your mouth is and have consequence for being wrong. It helps social discourse. And then lastly, for someone like me, I just wanted to know what was up. I just want to know what was likely to happen and how it was changing over time, because it's so difficult to discern what's fact and fiction when you're looking at social media. So I really had nothing to lose. I was very naive. I was 21, and I started Polymarket as an individual, as a solo founder, which everyone says don't do, and I'm going to double down and say don't do it. It's really difficult. But yeah, so the idea is, it's funny because there was so much literature laid out for me. Both my parents are academics, and even though I'm not much of an academic, I do love academic literature for things that I'm curious about. And the blueprint was kind of spread out for me, and people say, oh, startups change over time, et cetera. But if you really look at day one of Polymarket and even before it, I really had the vision of what happened today. People who met me, even before I started Polymarket, will be like, you were talking about how markets are a great information source, et cetera. And the final thing I'll say is, like, there are a lot of places to trade different events, or a lot of places to bet on things. And a lot of times people will say, like, for traders by traders or something like that. And like, that's not what Polymarket is. That's why the site comes across so differently, because it's like, it's the first markets site that's like actually built with the spectator in mind. And it seemed like there was a lot of latent demand for people who'd want to look at that. And we sit here today with like maybe even 100+ million people who looked at Polymarket forecasts as feeling pretty vindicated.
Yeah, we're going to get into that shortly. So it struck me as you're talking about kind of the history of these ideas and the fact that this isn't actually kind of the first iteration. In fact, Blockchain Capital invested in a prediction market called Augur in 2020. I wish we had invested in Polymarket in 2020. That would have been a good one to catch. We don't always get everything right, but we've always been kind of interested in that idea of the wisdom of the crowd. I'm really interested. Like, it's fascinating to me that these ideas have been around, and we have applied kind of this information efficiency to financial markets, but we have not yet, until now, right, applied that to information, like news markets, right? Or there's been this kind of weird bifurcation of like, okay, like information for financial products and economies is separate from like the news information, or maybe like the news, we've kind of given it this kind of holy grail status that it's always right, and we use that to inform our financial markets. And Polymarket is really challenging all of those assumptions and saying like, hey, we're not thinking about the interplay of those two things correctly. So I'd love for you to kind of like, why did it take so long? And then how is Polymarket kind of uniquely tackling that where we haven't seen it before?
I think in general, people would think about markets on the news, maybe traditional financial players, and be like, that's way too small for us to play in. Like, it's not worth the time, et cetera. It's not going to do volumes like commodities do volumes. And like, it's true, it does a lot less volume. It's a lot smaller right now of a financial market, and it's obviously growing a lot. But there's a whole different value prop, which is the information in the news, and that ultimately is going to need its own form factor for a product. You're not just going to be able to take a generic derivatives exchange and just slap them in there. It's something that you want people who are lurkers just to be able to digest and discover very easily. So to take it sort of a step back, when you think about like what it takes for someone to kind of build something new that is based on markets, like I think about T0 of Polymarket, and like I had no money, I had no connections, I had no path to anything, and building on a blockchain was just a way to be creative and to experiment. And truly, like, it was like, we're talking about tens of thousands, stressing over tens of thousands of dollars, like low tens of thousands of dollars, and sometimes the innovation, like now everyone can agree, like Polymarket needs to exist. It's really important. Every news event, people are looking at the odds. But the resistance and like the difficulties to go and build something like that when you don't even know if it's going to work, you don't even know if there's a market there, is just impossible, especially for like a young entrepreneur. And I mean that's what America's about, is young people having new ideas that may seem small and pushing it forward until it's the thing. So from our point of view, right, like it's the idea that some kid in his bedroom can go in and innovate and experiment and come up with new ideas is really powerful. That's what not only blockchains are about, but that's also what the internet was about. So there's tons of parallels, and I'm lucky that, I'm grateful that we get to be kind of one of the people who are the poster child of that. And you know, we don't take that responsibility lightly. Like, I think what I'm really proud about with Polymarket is like, everyone who knows about it, like, we've always done things high integrity. There's been tons of things in the space, almost every single thing in the space that's like taken a shortcut or done something that's kind of like get rich quickie. And like, we've never done that. We built a product, it's transparent, everything's on chain, you can see all the flow of funds, you can see all the transactions. And it's something that a lot of people find useful. You know, trading aside, there's over 100x the people who are participating in the markets who find it really useful. So I think that when you go and tackle these niche opportunities that may seem small, you figure out latent user demand, you figure out what people want, you iterate the product accordingly, and then you can build something that may have been hidden in plain sight for everyone that no one thought was worthwhile.
That's amazing.
And it turns out that it is.
It is. It's great. I'd love for you to talk about how crypto kind of uniquely changes how we do prediction markets, because there are other prediction markets that we're not going to talk about right now because they're not interesting, right? But like there are other prediction markets that don't leverage this technology. This is a crypto conference, right? We want to kind of think about like, why is this technology important for the market philosophy that you're building?
Totally. So first, there's the point I just made, which is like, you know, the same way with internet startups, it's like it lets people have a chance who are trying to innovate, who you know, are early on in their journey. And obviously, as we've grown, we've had to get, you know, there's been a learning curve, but we've had to learn a lot and invest a lot of resources in maturing the company. But I think that the coolest thing about it being built on chain is like the real vision is global free markets. And if you want to aggregate the most information, you want the most transparency, you want the most, you know, the cleanest slate where as many people know as much as possible. And a really underestimated facet of Polymarket is that when we say everything is on chain, that is pretty confusing. But the ledger of trades, where, you know, every market, who's trading what, the account or the wallet that's trading that, how many shares they own, what else they've traded, it's all publicly accessible. You can click activity, but you can also look on the blockchain. You can just see what people have traded, and that provides this other layer of transparency that doesn't exist in traditional financial markets, where the venue knows, but no one else knows. And because everyone knows, it allows people to be even more privy and consume more information when making up their minds about how they should price the market. They could say, oh, well, you know, there's only one user who's really big on one side, and that person has been wrong about things in the past, so I'm going to sort of discount it. Or if you see someone who's been really accurate in the past and they're on one side, that may make you think, you know, this person usually knows something, like, let me research this more. And the coolest part with all that is that the more information, the more transparency you get, it builds this habit for people, which is you go and you can anchor the research that you do personally, whether it's on X or whether it's in the news or whether it's even like open source intelligence communities. It gives you a basis of which you know which direction to lean in, because you know that the market is pricing things a certain way. And then when you see the market moving in a certain direction, like someone yesterday was telling me that they knew like the Assad regime was going to be toppled because, like, you know, many days prior on Polymarket they started seeing it move up. Which is crazy, but like also really, really useful from like a geopolitical perspective. So, you know, I think that I'm just glad that we live in a world that where this exists, and particularly that there's just so many ancillary benefits for people who are just onlookers.
Yeah. So look, I'm sure everyone knows Polymarket, but I'm not sure that everyone's actually been on it. So you're talking about kind of the transparency of information. If you spend time on Polymarket, it's actually really interesting. There's like a troll box where you can like see people making comments.
Yeah.
We call it a troll box at BCAP because we like to make fun of things, but in a good way. But like, you can see people's comments about things that are happening in real time, and you can see what their bet is, right? You can see like where they've placed it. And so I encourage everyone, like, you can do it right now, and like go to Polymarket, just pick a market and just see how people are commenting on what's happening, the odds. So I did this during the Paul and Tyson fight. And it was so fun, right? Because every round, right, people would, in the first round, Tyson came out swinging, was throwing some really strong punches, and people were like, oh shit, like this might actually be exciting. And so you had everyone who was like on Tyson's side of the fight jumping into the comment section, kind of talking about why they thought, they were like kind of vindicating themselves. Didn't go that way, right? And as the rounds wore on, you started to see
the market
change.
never priced him as a favorite. Let it be
No,
known.
he wasn't a favorite, but the people who had him, right? The people who like had his positions, right? And so I think like that's a feature of markets that we just don't have, right? That transparency doesn't exist to that level in any market. So I'd love for you to kind of like walk us through what the actual kind of mechanics, the experiences for people who haven't used it before.
Totally. I mean, first of all, it's like, how much better would Twitter X be if every time someone was spewing an opinion or pontificating, like they actually had money on the line? It's so like innate in language, like, oh, what are the odds? What are the chances? Oh, you want to bet? I'll bet you this. There's no shot. Like that is quantifying opinions in terms of skin in the game. Yeah. That we've built our social experience around that phenomena. That's an interesting example. I find the examples about geopolitics or politics in general, or macroeconomics, a lot more interesting, because it's like if someone has a lot at stake, you're going to read their comment in a different light. It means something more than someone just spewing it on X. Because you think about what's the incentive for someone who has a large position on Polymarket? It's to be right. That is what their incentive is. And then you think on X, what's their incentive? And it's to be sensational so that you get engagement. Two very different things. If we want positive civil discourse, we need game theory that optimizes for truth, not for sensationalism. So how it works is very simple. For every outcome, like, will this happen? There's a yes share and a no share. And it's all peer-to-peer. We are not a house. We don't take the other side of people's trades. It's also all on-chain and non-custodial. I know those are big words, but basically, if the outcome yes is correct, yes shares are redeemable for $1, and vice versa for no. And the cool thing is that if yes, people are trading yes, they're buying and selling it, and the way price discovery works is whatever people are willing to buy for, whatever people are willing to sell for in that moment. If people match on price, then the trade goes through, and then at any given moment, whatever equilibrium is, where it's like there's people on either side and sort of there's a midpoint, that's what the market price is. And the cool thing is, like, say yes is trading at 67 cents, it's basically saying the market is anointing the probability as 67. And it's basically saying there is a 67% likelihood, because you can buy for 67 cents to get $1. And the cool thing is that that's constantly happening, so you can see the probability, the likelihood change over time. And a lot of people, as we know, like, people tune into the news all the time, they tune into X all the time, they're always following current events, they're always following what's going on, and this has become this new way that's backed by incentives instead of just, spewing opinions, that people want to look, they want to see how the graph moves, they want to see what the likelihood is, and that's what we deliver. And it's been awesome seeing it find its way into the news cycle. And the final thing I'll say is, like, although there are a lot of complicated elements to Polymarket and to prediction markets, the idea of, it's 82% likely, and like a week ago it was like 62, and like it's been going up, and here's the graph, it's really simple. Like, it's simple enough to show like a high school student who's following the news, and they get it. So we were really fortunate to be able to to run an effective go-to-market and see
Yeah,
Polymarket becomes a popular.
let's segue into the election, right? So as Dave mentioned, this ended up being the place to follow the election. I think I'd love to kind of hear a little bit about what the experience was, seeing it just actually work. And then, so to your point about people putting their money where their mouth is and having skin in the game, there were these whales, right, who would like jump in and put just massive amounts. It's mostly on Trump's side, right? Just put massive amounts, and in traditional markets, that feels incorrect. It feels like potentially manipulation. How is that not the case here?
Well, when you say particularly on Trump's side, like it is peer-to-peer. Yeah. So if you wanted to put $1, if you wanted to put a trade on Trump, someone has to be on the other side on Kamala. So it's like this idea that there's tons of whales on either side, on one side. There's whales on both sides because every trade, there's two sides. So like that is just a complete myth. The second thing is that these trades were broken down, and by the time a lot of it was getting reported, it was like the guy hadn't traded in like over a week. And the market price is not a function of how much money is on either side historically. It's a function of market price in that moment, what it's trading at in that moment. So it sort of makes this point of like, there was one person who accumulated a lot of Trump a while ago, moot. Because it's like, that doesn't have much bearing over a week later what Trump is trading at. Plus, there was so many eyeballs and so much liquidity that like, the biggest difference. So first of all, people make large trades in the stock market all the time, and it's not manipulation. But the thing that makes this even more efficient than the stock market is because people say about the stock market, the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent because. What is the price of a share? It sort of trades in perpetuity. It can go up and up and up, even though you think the fundamentals are wrong.
Like GameStop or
yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if you have any leverage, you get blown out. With Polymarket, it's very simple. It's either going to be $1 if they're right, if Trump wins, or $0 if he doesn't. And when you can model the intrinsic value, the true value of the assets so easily. It's like, okay, what's the likelihood of this? If it's too low, we'll buy. If it's too high, we'll sell or we'll buy no. It creates this interesting dynamic, which is like when someone says someone's trying to manipulate the market, what does that mean? It means they're trying to overpay for shares. They're trying to artificially overpay, push the price up by overpaying. And there is enough smart money that if you're willing to go and pay an inflated price, they will take the other side. That's why it was so efficient. I think that, it's such an interesting vantage point to be sitting in the center of it because like Polymarket is 4.5 years old and like people didn't really give a shit about it for a while. Yeah. And then it became the thing that more people gave a shit about than anything. And I think that, all respect to existing media and people who devote their lives to politics, but markets are a more efficient, more accurate way to forecast events. And it was quite interesting seeing, and it's hard to grasp when you're so on the inside and you're just so engulfed in it, but it was quite interesting to see like a coordinated effort to try to discredit its accuracy, all based on like lies or misinterpretations of what Polymarket is. And you have to pick your battles, but I'm just really glad that the truth prevailed. Yeah. And once we got vindicated, like once it was clear that Polymarket was the most accurate thing, and everyone else was like, well, it's like 100,000 simulations and it's 50,000 either way, and it's like people are not going to go look at antiquated legacy systems now when Polymarket has this track record. So I'm just excited for that, and fortunately, a lot of the FUD, as we could say in our space, is sort of dissipated in the wake of our vindication.
That's amazing. Yeah, we've got a couple minutes left. We could like chat about this all day because it's so fascinating. It's a policy summit, so I'd love to kind of step outside of the like intense nerdery of the markets for a second. Just think about like what is Polymarket's engagement with policymakers, regulators? How does the environment on the policy side need to kind of rethink about markets and kind of open itself up to the possibility of having Polymarket. Polymarket is not in the U.S. right now, right?
You can't trade in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, I mean, look, like, it's not like I started Polymarket, I'm like, I want to, this to be international and offshore. I think Polymarket in general belongs in everyone's pockets. It's better the more accessible it is. It's better that the more people are paying attention to, because the more people are paying attention to, the more, if people think it's mispriced, they can participate to go and contribute to the magic that is price discovery. So, I mean, look, for us, it's like, we've always been open and engaged. We've always been committed to being in compliance. Right when we started, we ended up, with this settlement, and for years, 3 years, we've operated within the settlement. And ultimately, like, it's difficult when you're built on, we don't take custody. We don't have our hands on the pipes, right? It's built on chain. It's all transparent. It's all smart contracts. So, what we're really excited about is, the incoming admin loves Polymarket, which we're really grateful for. They've gotten behind it. They've publicly gotten it. And ultimately, I think a lot of people, especially when I meet people in DC or meet people who are in politics or finance, like, they love Polymarket. They think the world is better because this exists. So we relied on it heavily, and it worked as intended. There's no one complaining. There's no one who got burned. There's nothing bad who happened. People are almost entirely like, wow, this was like a real innovation that improved the flow of information. So, for us, what's important is just like, all we want, we have capital now. That wasn't the case in the past.
Okay, congrats on that.
Yeah, thanks. And, for us, as long as there's a clear and practical path, like, we want to be committed to go and do things the right way. That's why, I'm trekking out here. And I'm really optimistic about that for the coming admin. And, anyone who has questions, anyone who has advice, feedback, I'm always available. Another thing is, like, we don't do this in the darkness, right? Like, we're very public, we're very transparent, we're not hard to reach, because we're really committed to doing things the right way. So I'm excited about that.
Well, thanks, Shayne. It's fantastic to interview you, to hear about Polymarket, and for you to be here to show policymakers, regulators, kind of what the future of innovation looks like and how we can collaborate on that. So thanks so much.
Yes, thanks so much, everyone.